Andrew Carnegie was the richest person in the world from 1901 to 1912. His net worth at peak was $475 million, equal to $15.6 billion today. In 1901, jpmorgan bought his company Carnegie Steel Company for $480 million, of which Carnegie personally gained $310 million. jpmorgan merged the Carnegie Steel Company with other two steel companies to form US Steel, which is the world's first billion-dollar company and whose revenue today is over $20.22 billion. In 1889, he wrote an article, Gospel of Wealth, which became widely popular. In this article, he discussed that extremely wealthy people like himself had a responsibility to make huge donations to poor and use their wealth to benefit the world for greater good. Like Carnegie once said, "The man who dies rich dies disgraced." By the time he was 30 years old, Andrew Carnegie's shrewd investments were making him around $50,000 a year, equivalent to around $1.6 million in today's money. When he died at the age of 83 in 1919 in Lenox, Massachusetts, Carnegie was recognized as one of the leading industrialists of his day. He had been largely responsible for the massive expansion of the American steel industry and had become equally as famous as a philanthropist. So, how did this immigrant turn an impoverished background in Scotland into a name and level of fame that is still very much in evidence today, thanks to his various philanthropic foundations? In 1919, he died, and he only had $30 million left to his personal fortune. His wealth at peak was 0.6% of US GDP, which today is around. Want to know how a telegrapher with $2.5 salary became one of the richest people in history of the world? Watch the full video. Andrew Carnegie, a telegrapher with $2.5 salary, became the richest person in the world. We at Business Chronicles tell the stories of extraordinarily successful people. Please subscribe to our channel to help us in making more videos. In 1835, Andrew Carnegie was born in Dunfermline, which was a small town in Scotland. His father, William, was a handloom weaver, a job that paid less following the introduction of the power loom, forcing the family's relocation to the United States in 1848. They lived in Allegheny, Pennsylvania, now in Pittsburgh, amongst a community of similarly displaced Scots. At 12 years old, Andrew found work in a Scottish-owned cotton mill as a bobbin boy. This job involved changing spools of thread for 12 hours a day with only Sundays off. And for this punishing work, he was paid $1.20 a week, worth $45 today. In 1849, he worked in the Pittsburgh office of the Ohio Telegraph Company, earning $2.50 per week as a telegraph messenger. Carnegie was diligent and a hard worker. He managed to remember where all of the businesses in Pittsburgh were and the faces of the most important men. This was how he made connections. He also became highly adept at identifying the telegraph signals as they come in, to the point where he could translate them by ear. He educated himself, helped by Colonel James Anderson, who allowed working boys to read from the 400 volumes in his personal library every Saturday night. Carnegie vowed that if he ever became a wealthy man, then he would do the same for poor boys. At the age of 18, he came to the attention of a superintendent of the Pennsylvania Railroad Company called Thomas Scott. Carnegie became his personal telegraphist and private secretary at $4 per week, or $154 today. By the time he was 24, he took over as superintendent of the Western Division, and with the money he earned from the role, $1,500 or $53,500 today, he began investing. He put some of his cash into the Woodruff Sleeping Car Company, which originally patented the Pullman design, introducing the sleeping railroad car to America. His other investments were equally astute and included the Pittsburgh Locomotive Works, the Superior Rail Mill and Blast Furnaces, the Union Iron Mills, the Keystone Bridge Company, and one of the state's oil fields. He frequently sold railroad securities in Europe, all of which contributed to that $50,000 a year income. The demand for iron products, including armor for gunboats, shells, cannons, and much more besides, turned Pittsburgh into a center of production during the American Civil War, and Carnegie into an increasingly wealthy man. He made connections with steelmakers back in Britain anticipating further increases in demand for steel and iron. In 1865, he quit working for the Pennsylvania Railroad to manage the Keystone Bridge Company. The Bessemer steelmaking process, a British innovation, suddenly made steel production cost-effective, and Carnegie was an enthusiastic adopter when he created the forerunner of the Carnegie Steel Company, the J. Edgar Thomson Steelworks. His company built the first U.S. steel plants to use the process and adopted many other innovations. Whatever, so long as they could cut costs, boost efficiency, and keep the company ahead of the competition. Instead of going to suppliers for the iron ore deposits and coke that fed the furnaces, and rather than relying on the railroad and shipping companies that moved these essential raw materials to his mills, Carnegie thought it would be much more efficient to buy these parts of the supply chain. This extremely pragmatic approach was revolutionary, and it marked yet another remarkable step forward in the history of American manufacturing. Carnegie also recognized that his business relied on talent, so he made a point of recruiting extremely capable people that he knew he could rely on. These included Henry Clay Frick, an administrator, Captain Bill Jones, the inventor and steelmaster, and Thomas M. Carnegie, his brother. Andrew Carnegie consolidated his enormous holdings into the Carnegie Steel Company in 1889. This limited partnership became the dominant force in American steel. It elevated the industry as a whole, lifting American output to the point where it exceeded that of Great Britain, something that had never happened before. The Carnegie Steel Company was now the dominant force in the industry, with an advantage so unassailable that it even managed to profit during the 1892 Depression. Carnegie Steel, by now a corporation, achieved profits of $40 million in 1889, and Carnegie's share of that amounted to $25 million. He sold the business for $480 million, worth $17.13 billion today, in the following year to the United States Steel Corporation, a firm created by the financier jpmorgan. This was the end of his career as an industrialist, but he remained active as a prolific philanthropist. He spent the rest of his life dispersing his vast wealth among causes that would benefit society. Although Carnegie's name is synonymous with acquiring huge wealth and fulfilling the American dream, he was also a social and political commentator who wrote frequently on such matters. His article Wealth from the North American Review's June 1889 issue achieved widespread popularity. It became known as the Gospel of Wealth, and in it Carnegie declared that a man who dies rich dies disgraced. At the age of 33, he had proposed making no more than $50,000, about $1.7 million per annum for himself and giving away the rest. He believed that immensely rich people had a duty to take up philanthropy and that they should use their excess wealth to benefit mankind. True to his word, Carnegie spent the last 18 years of his life giving away somewhere in the region of $350 million, almost 90% of his fortune, of which $62 million went to British Empire beneficiaries and $288 million was bestowed upon American projects. The most prominent charitable organization were his Carnegie Trust for the Universities of Scotland, Edinburgh, set up to help improve and expand the 4 Scottish universities and to help pay for the education of students there. The Carnegie Institute of Pittsburgh was set up in 1896 with the intention of improving the educational and cultural institutions of Pittsburgh. The Carnegie Institution of Washington was set up in 1902 and made contributions to different types of scientific research. Then there was the Carnegie Dunfermline Trust of 1903, set up to offer assistance to Dunfermline's educational institutions, and the Carnegie United Kingdom Trust Dunfermline, set up in 1913 to assist with a number of charitable endeavors, including building child welfare centers, theaters, and libraries. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace followed in 1910, created with the intention of disseminating, mostly through publishing, information to promote understanding and peace between countries. In 1911, the largest of all the foundations was set up, the Carnegie Corporation of New York. Its purpose was to share knowledge and understanding between the people of America. It added Canada and the British colonies to its remit in 1917. The Carnegie Corporation of New York has helped libraries, universities, and colleges, as well as funded training and research in medicine, economics, and law. Andrew Carnegie came from a poor family of immigrants. He was lucky enough to lead the steel industry during Industrial Revolution in America. He used the latest technology and process invented by Sir Henry Bessemer that allowed steel to be made from iron more efficiently and quickly, giving Carnegie the competitive edge. There was a lot of construction happening and it all needed steel. Besides that, railroads, cars, planes, and many other such industries were booming, and they all needed steel. Andrew Carnegie entered a booming industry, and it made him the richest person in the world. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to watch more videos like this.